What's up? Welcome in on this Tuesday. It's been a minute. It's been a weekend. It's going to be a week, and we've got a short week. Just shows Tuesday and Wednesday this week. We're prepping for March Madness coming right around the corner. Gonna take a couple days off and hang out with the wifey for her 5th anniversary of her 10th anniversary of her 25th birthday. We're going to do some cool shit. We're going to do a little day drinking down by the lake. We're going to a ghost town thing that I'm not sure how I totally feel about it, but as long as I don't think of Keith Morrison while we're doing it, that's there. Plenty of stuff to talk about tonight. We had a weekend. Tony was right in the middle of it this weekend. Mac will be back with us tomorrow night. We've got some USA hockey to talk about. We've got the nemesis, the arch nemesis of Artie Moreno, the owner of the Angels, which is a microphone. We've got some NFL news and notes. We're going to talk about NBA tanking and how you out there, could be a qualified medical professional for the Utah Jazz, because it doesn't take very much. We're also going to talk about some of the stuff we saw in the NBA last night and making its show debut. You've seen it on our social channels at Mike Arana Show, everywhere but Snapchat, because we're not 12 and Snapchat sucks. That includes our brand new fancy, super cute Facebook page, which you need to go on and like and make sure you're on there. But the show debut of Hall Passes from TJ. If you don't know, we'll tell you about it when we get a little bit closer. But TJ, how the hell are you tonight, buddy?
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm still a little high from Sunday. And that
was incredible, dude.
I think I know we're getting back into it tomorrow, but I think that it's like the wave is starting to recede a little bit, but I'm still kind of amped up from just participating in that event on Sunday in the way that I participated. It was so much fun, and good. The team the team did what they had to do, and it is what it is. And here we go. We got to sprint to the finish.
Yeah, we've got a crazy sprint to the finish. Plenty of stuff to talk about. T and I are going to make our race set, if you will, second half predictions for the Stanley Cup final. And I think I might knock T off his chair with mine, because I'm going to choose to not be like everybody else, even though I basically told Mac, gave him the scenario not that long ago on what I thought the conference or the cup final would already be. But plenty of stuff to talk about there. Let's get into the beginning of it tonight. Feel free to comment along if you're watching along. Saw some pretty cool things in Major League Baseball today. The Red Sox-Pirates game featured 5 consecutive ABS challenges. I think there's some umpires going, I need to refresh my resume here and might need to look at something else. Plenty of exciting stuff, but we're going to start in something that's not quite as exciting if you reside where TJ resides and you're a fan of the baseball team that TJ is a fan of, and Artie Moreno. And this guy, when we talk about, it's always interesting to see these owners, and is it Monday? Is this a Buffalo Bills press conference? And like people that don't normally get in front of microphones, and you realize why they shouldn't get in front of microphones. Well, Artie Moreno might have just set the bar for an absolute dipshit move in talking about, and this gets even funnier as we get into it. But if you missed his comments from this weekend, he was talking about the fan experience and why the fan experience was what he was focused on and not focused on winning, which now the MLBPA, in whoever's directing that ship, we know the answer, but you know that story from last week. I don't know what to make of his comments, but now the MLBPA is starting to question if he actually is intentionally not trying to win. The other funny thing about this alleged survey that went out to Angels fans that they filled out is not a single Angels fan can reproduce this survey or has said that they've even seen the damn thing. This is your team. This is your team in your town. And it's funny because you and I went to the Sharks-Ducks game at the end of last season, and you literally we had to be rerouted into the pond because all the construction and all the money that the Ducks are dumping into their organization. And literally, you look right over the highway at the Angels Stadium, and you, Mr. I go to everything, and we'll get into that from Sunday's experience for you here in just a little bit. Only went to one Angels game last year. That tells me everything I need to know. What do you make of Artie's comments and the definition of foot in mouth or head up ass, depending on which way you want to look at it?
No, it's the second part, man. It's the second part. He really just needs to let this thing go. I know that they supposedly tried last year and it wasn't going to work out, but this is just an embarrassment. I feel the worst for the players. These are good players. These are Zach Neto is a superstar in the making. Logan O'Hoppe could be a starting catcher for the next dozen years. Nolan Shawnoel is coming into his own and could be a starting first baseman for 12 years. Joe Adell had a monster season last year. They've got G-Rod in a trade this year for Taylor Ward, and he's a reclamation project, but I mean, he was the number 2 pick in the draft. So this team has players. And then you hamstring this team with what they're doing to management. You say that it's an affordability issue. Well, why am I paying $19.25 for a Coors Light then? Mm-hmm. This is an affordability issue. Why don't you drop that thing down to $5 like the Diamondbacks did? There has to be a way for him to go away, for him to go away. And we talk about the Lakers not being serious until LeBron is gone. This team will not be serious until Artie sells the team. It just won't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's, I don't even know where to start with this just because I read it and I thought it was like, I legit thought it was like, there's a bunch of AI slop and a bunch of crap out there and everything else. And, I do kind of see a little bit of what he's saying in a certain aspect, but most of what he said was just an absolute slap in the face to the diehard Angels fans, to the players. He went on to say in this just verbal diarrhea that he spewed out, for me, I've always wanted to win. It's just, what is the cost of winning right now? $19.25 Coors Lights have nothing to do with the cost of winning right now. The question is, do one or two players substantially change the record if you go out and spend 15 or 20 million a year times 3 or times 5, and if it doesn't get done? Well, how do you know? Because you really haven't tried, Artie. I mean, I saw a story today on X, and I meant to repost it, and I got sidetracked. But Alex Manoah, we know the story of him, and apparently he's got incredible zip, and he looks really, really good so far in spring training. Well, nobody can tell you what kind of incredible zip he has because they don't have radar guns out where he's pitching right now. Like, everything he said was a direct slap in the face. And he goes on to say there's a huge difference between spending and spending wisely. I'd like to see you do any of that. And to be fair, there's been a couple of times, we know the elephant in the room, who's not actually in the room because he doesn't want to be in the room, Anthony Rendon's contract. That's not spending wisely. That was jumping on thing at the time. And you've documented this better than anybody has. He has spent some money on stupid contracts. Now you've got a GM who's on his last year of his deal. You bring in a manager who's got a 1-year friggin' deal. That shows me that you have no idea what the hell you're doing. I don't care if you have billions anymore. I'm tired of it. I'd rather have a poor owner that has a concept of what it takes to win and will hire a baseball guy in this sense to do this. And I'll use the example that I know has been closest to me was Jed York when he had his come to Jesus moment. And after the Harbaugh and Jim Tomsula and Trent Baalke and that whole mess, he went, you know what? I'm going to hire a football guy to handle the football decisions. And yes, the Niners have not broken the door down, but they've been right there since Jed York said, this is not what I know how to do. John Lynch, you go ahead and do it. That's where Artie's at, but he's not smart enough to figure it out.
Well, I'll give you two examples from the sport that I'm most familiar with. Vinny Viola of the Florida Panthers and Tom Dundon of the Carolina Hurricanes. Tom Dundon, who is a notoriously known as a cheapskate and not wanting to spend money, got somebody in there to make the decisions, and all Dundon has to do is sign the checks, and he's doing it. Same thing with the Panthers. Vinny Viola gets a good leadership team in there with Bill Zito, and he just signs the checks. And look what he's got. He's got 3 Stanley Cup appearances and 2 cups. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. I appreciate the fact, too, that you said that he has spent some money. I can appreciate him being a little bit gun shy because the contracts that he signed players to were were bad contracts. Like Pujols' contract was junk in 3 years. We had no way of knowing it, but that was what it took to get Pujols. Josh Hamilton, he had 1 good season, and after that, it was a fiasco. And the Rendon deal was I know, and I can't believe I'm going to stick up for him here, but he was the number 1 free agent on the market in 2019 after the World Series championship. Mm-hmm. So, yes, but it's baseball, man. You have to spend money to win. You just have to. And rolling out a bunch of AAA players is not going to, as much as I love to see these players grow and get better, that ain't getting it done. Get out, sell the team, get out of town, sell it to somebody who will do something with it.
Yeah, and you botch the Ohtani thing. He walks out the door for nothing, and then to make it even worse and pour salt in the wound, he walks out the door to the other side of freaking town. Mm-hmm. And that was, and Kevin Pillar had some great comments after this results of what he got in his survey that he just imagined in his head that no Angels fans actually been able to tell us that they've seen. Jeff Joyner put out an article on SI about 3 hours ago, and I think he makes some incredible friggin' points here. And, one of the sub-headlines that he writes in here is the Angels could have improved the team this offseason and simply did not. The third base was an obvious position for for Anaheim. You know who the hell I'm talking about. And, it's and I meant to send this to you, and I didn't get it. I didn't have 2 and 2 together in time to send it to you. But, he goes through this and talking about third base. Well, Kazuma Okamoto would have added to both the win total, as Joyner writes, and the fan interest. Okamoto signs for $16 million per year in Toronto. The best bargain of the offseason, Joyner goes on to write, was likely Sungwon Song, who signed at $4 million a year with the Padres. Even if Artie needed to pay an overpay for him a little, his upside much greater of that of Yon Moncada, who they signed for similar money. He goes on talking about Mike Trout and his injury issues. Well, Harrison Bader was available. Mm-hmm. He signed for next to nothing with the Giants. Like, you can sit here and critique the current state of baseball all you freaking want to, and I think it's fair in some cases. But, like, there's guys that another million gets you a guy as opposed to somebody else, and in Okamoto's case, somebody else that's in your league that that you should be trying to compete with. They're not going to compete with Toronto. They're worlds away from Toronto. Like, there's ways to spend money wisely and still get good value players, and it's just he doesn't want to do any of it.
No, it's embarrassing, and you're right. It is a slap in the face to the fans. I get calls and emails. Hey, you're going to buy tickets this year? Are you freaking kidding me? Are you straight up kidding me? I'd rather take my money and flush it down the toilet. Or I'd rather go sit at the South 40 and just pound beers until I'm blue in the face at this point than spend $30 to go to a game. I got to pay for the part. I mean, look, going to a game is not cheap. That's why we try to do it as cheaply as possible, as often as we can. But for sake, dude, like, if I'm going to go out there and watch the Salt Lake Bees, then I ain't doing it.
Yeah, and I popped on they were playing the Rockies today, the Angels were. The Angels, who had the largest get-in-the-door price for a home opener in the Cactus League. Why? Because they were playing the Dodgers. $78 to get into the door for that one. But today, even the Rockies announcers on the broadcast were bagging on the Angels. I mean, that's how bad the Angels' perception is league-wide. And if in Southern California you can't convince guys to come to Southern California to play baseball in a division that, yes, we've talked about it, and we're going to do our baseball preview show here in a couple of weeks, but in a division that the Mariners are the only sure thing in the division right now. That's the only thing I think we know in the AL West that's a for sure thing. Obviously, we know the Astros are probably going to be there whether we think they're going to or not. Texas remains to be seen. They made some interesting moves. We've talked about the A's and their offensive lineup. They still don't have the pitching. It's not hard to compete in the AL West right now, but you have to want to, and that's clearly something that he doesn't want to do. Other couple of baseball notes here before we get into TJ's Sunday, which was incredible. Connor Griffin. If anybody was in doubt that he is undoubtedly, if you will, the number one prospect in baseball, just go watch the highlights of his 2 home runs he hit against the Red Sox today. One of them I'm pretty sure hasn't landed yet. Incredible stuff there. Speaking of teams that'll probably screw it up, the Pittsburgh Pirates. But Griffin looking to be the first 19-year-old to start or to make an opening day roster and start for a team since Ken Griffey Jr. And a lot of hype. I get it. You're hitting in spring training off of guys that probably get sent back to Double-A here in a couple of days. But these weren't cheap home runs from Connor Griffin today, dude.
No, he's the real deal, Holyfield. But I could totally see him. So I can see two situations here. The Pirates are forced to have him start the season because to generate the fan interest and to sell tickets and put butts in the seats, or you send him down until May or June, do the old Chris Bryant thing and pull him up so they don't have to burn a year off before his arbitration rights kick in. So I could see one of those two. Dude, hitting home runs in February is nice, but it's the ones at March and April that are ones that are going to count. So let's see what he can do. But along that same line, did you see Zach Veen's home run yesterday?
Yes.
Holy smokes.
Speaking of balls that haven't landed yet.
And good for him. I mean, that's a I don't know if you read the story about him, but he had a lot of issues last year. So good for him to come back and kind of put an exclamation point on his, I'm not going to say his comeback, but I mean, that was a freaking P missile for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of home runs that haven't landed today, my boy Jack Caglione against the Reds down in Goodyear hit another moonshot. Let's see if that translates to good things for him this year, as he will be up for the whole year. Chris Sale, $27 million extension with the Braves, and shout out to the Braves here in this time of TV uncertainty and how the hell do I watch my game. They announced on Tuesday that Braves Vision will be their local television home beginning with the 2026 season. So this season, they will oversee the production, sales, and marketing and distribution of the telecast of more than 140 games this season. The Braves chose to control the Braves Vision plan instead of having the telecast produced by Major League Baseball, something that a lot of teams are doing. There's been talk that Braves Vision is going to be a multi-team kind of endeavor for them, possibly including the Nashville Predators, the Memphis Grizzlies, amongst some others. So shout out to them there. Let's get into Sunday. And if you missed the video on our social channels, go check it out because T was right in the middle of the mix. Shout out to Legends in Long Beach. Up early, you were amongst a hell of a crowd, wall to wall in Long Beach, and you were smart enough for us to capture the post-goal celebration, which was quite the scene. Mm-hmm. The U.S. finally gets it done, and I know we were waiting for this, and it's funny, somebody posted a tweet literally 11 years ago, I think it was in 2015, that U.S. youth hockey had reached 100,000 and watch out in the 2026 Olympics. Just an absolute incredible scene, an incredible game, a game that, if you were watching it, the U.S. was very, very lucky to get that win because I don't think under siege was the right way to describe what the hell was happening in the second and third period. Connor Hellebuck, absolutely freaking incredible in goal. I'm literally just waiting here the days to order the picture of that stick save that he made. But, there's a lot of takeaways from this game. There's a lot of takeaways, including some sore loser comments from one of my favorite players in the NHL. We'll get to that in a second. But tell the folks out there about the experience that you had around that crowd, getting up hella early on Sunday morning.
Well, the best part, too, is how quickly it came together because my buddy texted me on Saturday afternoon and said, we're going to watch the game at 5 a.m. because it's right by his house. He's like, we're going to go watch the game. My brother's going, and I was like, this sounds like a once in a lifetime opportunity. Let's do it. Roll in there, got in there like at 5:15, and it's packed upstairs, downstairs. No booze until 6. So and dude, you want to talk about a sports bar? This place was on top of things. Waters and coffees all around, and breakfast. They had breakfast. They had everything was ready to go. Games on every single screen, including a ginormous projection screen. It was absolutely, and just everybody being there. And there were people rooting for Canada, people rooting for the United States. We sat with a guy from the Ukraine. It's like everybody was just enjoying and just living in the moment. And that was pretty amazing to see. And then, the ebbs and flows of the game and all it was kind of like being at a stadium in a way, because, all the cheering and all the, oh, ooh, all those things. It was, and the shoot the puck calls on the power play, but dude, it was incredible. And when they finally pulled it off at the end, the place went absolutely BS crazy.
Yeah, and again, a long time coming for the U.S. We thought they had it in the Four Nations tournament. They ended up falling a little short. I think what you saw in this team, and Bill Guerin had some very interesting comments after. He's like, there's guys that are milk drinkers and there's guys that are whiskey drinkers, and you put them all together, and thankfully we got a lot of whiskey drinkers on this team. And to take it a step farther, even after the fact, and bringing the Gaudreau kids down on the ice, and you could definitely tell that they were playing for Johnny Hockey there. And I think there was several times that a lot of people watching the game could go, you know what, this is a little bit of a divine intervention thing, because the way they played, especially in the second period, they deserved to lose that game, and they could not get anything going in forward momentum. I know you have a couple of key points, and we're going to kind of go through these all here, but for me, the biggest takeaway, and the thing that I don't think is getting talked about enough still, is the play that Charlie McAvoy made behind Connor Hellebuck. That whole scrum in there, and I'm watching it, and wife's asleep, dogs are asleep. I'm trying not to wake anybody up, and I see that play, and I'm like, I literally grabbed my pillow, and I'm like, what are you doing? And then McAvoy finds a way to get back there and essentially make the save in the scrum, because he was the last line of defense. I mean, you saw a team that clearly it was gold or this doesn't work for us here. I thought Austin Matthews was a little MIA at times in the gold medal game, which is really frustrating. Give me a couple of your key takeaways, at least from the U.S. side. We'll talk about the Canada side here, because there's a guy I need to call out for some piss-poor loser comments after.
Well, before I get into my list, I thought Austin Matthews was also kind of MIA, and then I started watching some replays. And what we didn't see, and it's nobody's fault, because, the TV broadcast focuses on where the puck is and all that. What we didn't see is how well he was playing defensively. He was a full 200-foot player, and so that doesn't show up on the score sheet, but I'm willing to give Matthews his flowers for that. This fair. Team, there was a lot of questions about, why are you bringing in Trocheck and Miller to kill penalties? Bro, they went 17 for 17 on the penalty kill, and Trocheck won 2/3 of faceoffs on the penalty kill. So, Guerin definitely had knew what he was doing. A couple of things that I thought first, the stops on the breakaways, the killing off the 5-on-3, the stick save, obviously, and the McKinnon, just dude, 101 times out of 100, he makes that. That's the one.
I think I text that to you guys. I'm like, how in the hell did he miss that? As soon as I saw the puck slide over, I'm like, oh shit. I was expecting it, because he never misses that.
No, and you just you take all those and add them all up, and Hughes getting the penalty, so now we had to kill off on the double minor, so now you have to kill off a little bit of penalty time at the end of the third. You just stack all these things up, and it's just like, dude, they were not going to lose. They just weren't. And so you're right. It was it was kind of like a divine intervention. Did they deserve? I don't know. Jay Swish on Twitter said something about deserved is a tough word there because, hockey's just one of those games where if you're a second too soon or a second too late, you're going to miss the play. And luckily for the U.S., they were on top of almost every single play.
Yeah, absolutely were. And, we obviously just showed the McKinnon shot that he missed. You mentioned a couple of the other ones. I mean, you got, and to be fair, I mean, Connor McDavid never had good wood on that breakaway. He never had the puck in an optimal position there, but the pressure from behind, Macklin Celebrini on the breakaway, I went, oh, this is going to be horribly ironic for me that Macklin's going to be the one that gets it. Great tournament out of all three of those guys. And we talked about that top line for Canada, and we talked about how tough they were going to be, and they were tough the whole way through. You even brought it up in your first ever edition of TJ Before Sunrise that we played late Saturday night, and it was all about the Max. It was all about that top line. But Nathan McKinnon after the game, you watch the tape and you tell me who the best team was on the ice. Well, and Jared Smith, our guy on X, he pointed this out. Well, the best team on the ice was the one that had more points than you on the scoreboard.
Yeah,
I get it. Heat of the moment. You're asking for these things right after, especially especially the U.S. and Canada. And you're asking for comments and everything else. But to come out and basically how about hey, you know what? We had plenty of opportunities. We shit the bed. Hats off to the U.S. Leave it at that. I know you're not going to kiss their ass. I know what the rivalry is. The funny thing is how many of these guys were playing against each other, and as of tomorrow, we're going to be playing with each other now on the same teams again, which is one of the cool dynamics. We fast forward to 2030. We're looking at an opportunity here where we could have a gold medal hockey game, a rematch between the U.S. and Canada on the same day as the Super Bowl in 2030, which would be pretty friggin' incredible. But what this does for U.S. hockey going forward, I think, is the underlining thing. And a lot of people were very critical. You saw a lot of people, including us, reference, the Herb Brooks speech and the 1980 team. And, this is a different team and they have their own identity. I understand that. And culturally, not the same scenario as it was in 1980. But for what it did for youth hockey, these guys that just won a gold medal, that was their inspiration. And I think Mike Tirico, and I can't say this enough about Mike Tirico and the run he's been on. He'll be back on Sunday Night Basketball this week, but he summed it up perfectly at the end. Not even just talking about the hockey impact on it, but all of these young athletes watching all of these Olympians and what it does for them. Now is your time to go chase your... I mean, Tirico is... We are fortunate. We are lucky to have a guy like Mike Tirico and that whole crew, like Kenny Albert and Boosh and Eddie O. The only guy that could talk a stamp off an envelope is Brad Marchand. And they were fantastic. I could listen to them 24/7. But what this is going to do for youth hockey in the U.S., not only on the men's side, and you pointed this out perfectly, and I brought this up on Friday's show, what you said about the women's team winning and the impact that that's going to have on U.S. women's hockey at the youth level. I mean, a double gold. They both beat Canada. You couldn't have put the cherry on top of the sundae any better.
No, and I want to go back to that goal by Megan Keller was absolutely disgusting. Just how you pull that out in a high pressure moment like that. And just I was sitting there watching it. And I'm like, I can't believe she just did that. It was unreal. So yes, and you know what? Go buy the jerseys, go buy the merch, go do all that stuff. Go get stick time. Go watch these things 100 times over and try to recreate it. That's how U.S. hockey stays good in 2030 and 2034 and 2038, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad, not a hockey fan at all. It took me to the Sharks' first game at the Cow Palace. Took me to the Sharks' first game when they opened the tank. Even on Megan Keller's goal, he was like, "Oh my God, that was an amazing goal! How did she even do that?" And then the text I got him, I can't read it word for word to you after the gold medal game was over, but he went out. Not a hockey fan. I'm telling you, this dude, not a hockey fan. And he went out to go watch the game out at a local place by him at 6 a.m. And that just shows you that the reach and the impact of it. So, Now, unfortunately for some people that turned on hockey for the first time in the Olympics, they're going to turn on the Vancouver Canucks or the New York Rangers and go, what the hell is this shit right now? That all gets going again tomorrow night. We'll talk about a little bit of that here in just a bit. We're going to talk some NFL real quickly here, and then we're going to get into the NBA and college basketball. If you missed it Saturday, they revealed the top 16 teams, top 16 seeds in the NCAA tournament. Then all hell broke loose. And then the Utah Jazz just find more ways to piss me off. But let's get into a couple of things. We found out today, not surprisingly, that the Atlanta Falcons will be releasing Kirk Cousins, so he will be a free agent, and that could be for another team. That could be for TV. A lot of people thought he was very impressive in his TV time at the end of last season. Are you surprised that the Falcons are moving on here, knowing the uncertainty at quarterback with Michael Penix, or is this a Matt Ryan move and we're going in a different direction?
I think it's the second part. And you know what? If I'm John Spytek, I'd make a phone call to him just to gauge the interest, just to see if he's willing to come in. Like he reminds me of a Rich Gannon 2.0 situation. Mm-hmm. And so if you're Tom Brady, I would call him in 2 years, pile money. You want to come in and help train this new guy?
Who's the freaking new guy around here? I think it's and I on our social channels earlier today, I shared my thoughts from Friday's show about loving the direction of the Raiders and how they're assembling this coaching staff and really seeing Tom Brady's thumbprint. I think that would be another move that would speak to Tom Brady's thumbprint. And I don't know if you could pick a guy, any guy in the NFL that you have access to that would be a better mentor of how to be a professional quarterback for Fernando Mendoza than Kirk Cousins. And I think there's a couple of teams in that exact same scenario, one of which, this one wouldn't make as much sense as the Raiders one does, but Nick Caserio, the general manager of the Houston Texans, came out today, and all these people that think that there could be a C.J. Stroud trade coming out, and he said, quote, "It is moronic to talk about a C.J. Stroud trade," and I absolutely agree with him. Listen, we know C.J. Stroud has definitely regressed from his coming into the NFL moment and really playing well in his rookie season. But they're in an interesting situation because we know how teams get hampered and hindered with these massive quarterback contracts when they have to give them. And I'm sure they're a little gun-shy there. But if anybody actually thinks or thought for a second that the Texans were going to trade C.J. Stroud, you need to reevaluate your priorities and what you're doing with your life, because I agree with him. It's completely moronic.
And lest everybody forget that he missed 3 games this year because of injury. And so, I don't think you got the full CJ Stroud package this year like last year. So yeah, good for him to stand up for his guy. He means too much for the Texans.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick Sirianni, speaking of Knicks, came out today and said he can't guarantee A.J. Brown's return. I think that pretty much tells us that A.J. Brown will not be back in Philadelphia. Whether that's a good move for the Eagles or not, I'll say this, and we haven't done bold predictions on next year's NFL season yet, because just like I said on Friday's show, if you're betting win totals right now, and they've been put out on a certain site, you're kind of crazy. And if you just want to throw away money, just hand it to me, because so many things are about to change as we get to March 9th and free agency and then the draft and everything else. But I think the writing's on the wall that A.J. Brown's not coming back in Philadelphia. Another thing that I'm going to be paying attention to very much, T, when it comes to the Eagles, I almost wonder if we're going to see a Kansas City Chiefs year out of the Eagles here, because this thing seems like it's unwinding from the inside. And obviously A.J. Brown not being back could be a good thing for everybody involved, including A.J. Brown. But just kind of interesting that we're going to come out boldly and leave a comment like that this early in the process, because you're kind of cutting your leverage there a little bit.
Can't be covered 24/7. Can't be covered. Maybe he can keep slinging insurance. I don't know. Look, he may have worn out his welcome. That's fine. Players do that, right? I don't have any problem with what Sirianni said. He also probably can't guarantee that, a bus won't crash into the practice facility tomorrow. It is what it is. But, it looked like from his actions this year that A.J. Brown had one foot out the door. And so try and trade him, release him, do whatever. He did what he had to do in 2024 to get you a championship. So thank you very much, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, absolutely. Last piece of news here, if you will, or two more here, real quick. Breece Hall and the Jets. The Jets have come out, speaking of just tossing your leverage right out the window, the Jets have come out and said, hey, we're going to tag him if we can't reach a deal with him. I don't think that's a surprise there. I think the Jets need to hold on to anything that resembles a good player right now because there's not many of them. The other one, kind of interesting, John Spytek comes out today and says that he expects Max Crosby to stay a Raider despite the rumors out there. That's kind of playing your leverage, I think, in a good way, saying that you expect him to stay. Sounds like everything's kind of golden. Sounds like everything's kind of good, hunky-dory and whatever. I still think Crosby gets traded, and as much as it sounds crazy, we've talked about this a bunch of times. He's the only leveraged chess piece that you have to kind of speed up this rebuild in Las Vegas. Now that we're about a week later, we're a little bit closer to the start of free agency. We're hearing more names. What do you think? Have you changed your tune on whether Max Crosby remains a Raider or not?
No, I still think he's the one who can fetch you the most. And so you have to – you're not a good GM, you're not a good management team if you don't at least explore the possibilities here. So he's owed, 30 this year, and, oh, man, he's got an out clause in 28. So he's got term on his deal. You can probably get him for a couple of high picks. I would ask for a high pick and a prospect, or a high pick and a player, to be honest. But look, if he's the one that can get you 2 or 3 assets, then you have to have the conversation. And Crosby has been a consummate pro. He wants to be part of the solution. I love that. But if part of the solution is you going to San Francisco for assets, then that has to be part of the solution.
Nobody in San Francisco would have a problem with that. Feel free to comment along if you're watching along. To tank or not to tank is the question in the NBA, and there's some good games going on right now in the NBA. There was a great one last night. We'll talk about that here in just a second. Cavaliers up 69-58 on the no-defense playing New York Knicks. But the tanking thing, and since we last talked about tanking here, Adam Silver has initiated a conversation with the 30 GMs across the NBA, and essentially what came out of that is your only incentive is going to be to win games. Well, that's all fine and good and sounds great and all this stuff. Talking about, freezing the lottery, taking it over a 2-year period, this, that, and the other thing. Well, there's a couple people that have spoke out about this, and one of these isn't new, and it would be new to a major professional sports league. It has been done in the Professional Women's Hockey League. But Adam Gold, and if you're not familiar with the Adam Gold plan, this is kind of interesting because his plan essentially says the day you're eliminated from playoff contention, you start to accumulate points for wins in regulation, wins in overtime, getting to overtime, basically giving the teams that are down incentives to win games as a way to curb tanking. Charles Barkley, in the way only Charles Barkley can do, on ESPN the other night, came out and said, hey, listen, here's my thing. If your team is tanking and you continue to lose games, you're not allowed to raise your ticket prices. Also, you get one ping pong ball and no more protecting draft picks. Like these teams, they give up draft picks. Once that pick is gone, it's gone. You don't get to protect it anymore. There's a couple of different ways to look at this. Meanwhile, you've got a team in the Utah Jazz that have really spearheaded why we're having this conversation. And today, actually it was later yesterday, but today, I'll say it, Utah has announced that Yusuf Nurkic is having surgery on his nose, and he is out for the rest of the season. I don't know who's making the medical decisions in Utah right now, but it can't be a hard job to get. Jaren Jackson comes over from the Grizzlies, a great move. A power move for the West. And he has an issue that needs to be taken care of. So he's done for the year. And now a deviated septum is going to keep out Yusuf Nurkic for the year. T, one of the things we talked about last week, and I hate to say this, and I will never question a professional athlete's want to. There's times that you probably think you can, but what's happening with the Utah situation specifically, and I'm not saying they're the only team, but they're the team that just keeps literally in your face saying, we don't care and we're going to do this. Mm-hmm. You should never question a guy who's out for the rest of the year. And I think what Utah's doing, what Sacramento's doing, is making a lot of us go, well, is that something that really needed to be taken care of right now? Or could this guy have played it out and taken care of this day one of the offseason? What do you think of the different options here, and how do we curb tanking in the NBA?
First, I'm a huge fan of the gold plan. I think that that's something that should be instituted among all the sports, because it does provide incentives to try. And I think that's what we need here is you need incentives, an improved draft position, or I love the point system that is that he uses here. I feel the worst for season ticket holders who paid full price at the beginning of a season for a product that they're not getting full price value out of in games 28, 29 of their home package. That is absolutely bad business. So I agree with Chuck. Like, no, you're not raising your prices either. But I think the gold plan has a lot of, I think if they watch the PWHL with this and see how it works, and so we have like real data to watch, I think that's a plan that should go across the board here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of detractors to it, and to familiarize the audience out there a little bit more for those who aren't familiar with it. So Gold was a PhD student in 2012. He presented this idea at the MIT Sloan Sports Athletic Conference. And again, the way it works, 3 points for a win, 2 points for a win in overtime, 1 point for a loss in overtime, 0 points for a loss outright. Once a team is mathematically eliminated from playoff contention, they immediately start earning what he called draft order points for all remaining games of the season. And as we've said, it was actually adopted by the PWHL in 2024, and it worked. Instead of teams tanking at the end of the season to increase their chances at the number one pick, every team was playing like they had something on the line. They even added their own wrinkle in the PWHL that awards the second overall pick to the team that actually has the worst record. So genuinely bad teams aren't totally disadvantaged by this plan. Mm-hmm. Here's my problem with it. And I think this is most people's problem with the gold plan is, for the most part, most of these teams that are in position to have a high draft pick in the lottery or out of the lottery, they're bad basketball teams to begin with. There's a reason that they suck. Now, this year, some of them were dumb enough to try and actively start tanking before the friggin' All-Star break, which just shined a big, bright, flashing light. Hey, there's your beam, Sacramento. Shove it right up you know where. I mean, you can't draw any more attention to yourself than actively trying to tank. So I think part of it is, and there's going to be detractors to every possible solution here, or proposed solution. But I think that's my problem with the gold plan is it penalizes teams that maybe have been trying to tank secretly, because there's teams that are bad basketball teams. And I've got another thing that we're going to talk about here in a second that I think has a lot to do with why some of these teams are consistently shitty in the NBA. But here's the other thing this year in the NBA draft that kind of blows my friggin' mind. And I get it. There is a ton of talented freshmen in college basketball. Whether you like what he's doing or not, Darren Peterson, if he's on the floor, is one of the best players in college basketball.
Yeah,
You've got Cam Boozer that we've talked about a lot lately, and I can go on and on and on that list. Kingston Flemings, we can go for 10 minutes on all the talented freshmen. But there's not a Cooper Flag. There's not a Victor Wembanyama in this draft. So what are we really trying to do here by just blowing it up? I mean, Sacramento, you could hand them the number one pick and a generational talent like a Cooper Flag or a Victor Wembanyama, and they'd still find a way to screw it up. That's the part I really don't get here. So if you're a Sacramento fan and you're seeing this team shut everybody down, clearly you have no direction, and you end up taking Darren Peterson over number one overall, and Darren Peterson is the Darren Peterson we've actually seen over the last couple of weeks, not the guy who brings all his stuff to the table. Guess what, Sacramento? You suck again, and now you're going to be back in the same position. So that's where I don't agree necessarily with the gold plan, because I think there are bad teams that are bad teams because they're poorly run and they're just bad basketball teams. I don't I like more what Chuck's saying, hit the owners in the pocketbook, because that's where it hurts them the most.
Well, I don't see why it couldn't be a combination of the two. I see what you're saying. Like some teams, like we see this in other. We see it down the street with my baseball heroes, right? Who couldn't run a draft. They drafted 20 pitchers in 2020. 20 pitchers. And only 2 of them has seen the light of day here. So, sometimes you're right. It's bad management that keeps making bad decisions. But any incentive that you can provide for the nonsense to stop, like, give me a break. Like, I know that Ryan Smith is too busy with his new toy, but for freak's sake, this is embarrassing. Straight up embarrassing.
Yeah, it's absolutely embarrassing. But I'll tell you another thing that definitely keeps the bad teams bad in the NBA. And I get it, it's a moneymaker, but you can make money other ways. So I'm not going to sit here and cry for you losing something. That's the play-in tournament. Okay, the play-in tournament is the most useless damn thing the NBA's ever come up with. And if you're like, no, it gives everybody a chance, bullshit. Play-in tournament teams. This thing started in 2021. They are 2-14 in the first round. Only 2. Miami and the Lakers have actually advanced out of the first round. And when you break it down by seeds, your 10 seed, basically useless. Your 9 seed, a little bit of success. Our 7 and our 8s end up being our 7 and our 8s. 7 teams in the NBA, 7, have never played in the play-in tournament. 4 in the West, Denver, Houston, Phoenix, and Utah. I was a little surprised that Utah's actually sucked so bad that they've never been in the play-in tournament. And 3 in the East, Detroit, Milwaukee, and New York. So of the 16 teams that have actually advanced out, 14 of them ended up sliding back a couple of draft spots because they advanced on to be sacrificial lambs in the first round of the NBA playoffs. You're hurting bad teams by barely letting them in just to get their asses kicked in the first round of the play-in tournament. There's no point to the play-in tournament other than hurting draft positions for teams that didn't belong in the playoffs in the first place. Get rid of the damn thing.
Look, I'm with you there. I think it's not, and it's not. Any 10 seed can beat a 9 seed, or any 8 seed can beat a 7 seed on any given night. If you really wanted to give this thing justice, it'd be a best of 3 at least. But yeah, so we're going to be a 10 seed and we're going to advance to the playoffs to lose to the Nuggets. But I mean, we're going from 16 to 18 on the, no, not a chance. I would rather this is where tanking is good, because that last game, you'd be like, nope, none of you fools are playing. We're bringing in 7 through 15 on the bench is playing the entire game. Have a nice day.
Yeah,
that's the only time I could see it being worthwhile.
Well, and here, let's tie it in. Let's tie it into your favorite sport. Let's tie it into the NHL. There's 2 things, and don't hate me for saying this, but I think there's 2 things that need to happen here, which will end up improving the overall quality of a lot of the teams. One is to expand the NBA draft. And people are going, oh, God, no, I don't want to expand the NBA draft. Listen, the draft gets done. I'm not saying I want it televised, because then they'll stretch it out over 4 friggin' days, and the 4th day will be in, like, the playland of McDonald's where they broadcast it from. Expand the NBA draft. Add 2 rounds to the NBA draft. Because what happens at the end of the NBA draft? We get all these GMs and all these agents leveraging teams so they can get their undrafted free agents, and a lot of whom have had success in the NBA. But you're just leveraging positions to get these guys where you want them to go. Instead of taking the smart thing and getting one of these guys to the shittiest team possible, where he's got a beeline to actually make the active NBA roster, expand it. Because we have the G League. Well, damn near, I don't think it's everybody, but pretty much everybody in the NBA has a G League affiliate now. Even the Suns. Matt Ishbia just put the Valley Suns here. Mm-hmm. You expand the draft, now you're drafting guys for your G League team, and you're developing them in your system instead of just this free agent bullshit free-for-all. The other thing I think we need to do is maybe take a look at how the NHL does their draft lottery, which a lot of people still don't know how the hell it works. And I'll admit, it's confusing as hell. Mm-hmm. But you either adopt the Barkley system, and you say, screw it. You get a pick, you trade it, it's gone. You get 1 ball, everybody gets 1 ball, boom. Or you take, your lottery is for your first 2 spots, and then everybody else below that can't move up 10 spots. Because what do we do, T, in the hockey draft that has what? We're still at 7 rounds, if I remember correctly. You draft prospects. What happens in the NBA draft? You draft players. And I think that's the biggest difference between those two leagues and how they handle the way young players come into the league.
No, I think you make a perfectly valid point, and I've always wondered why the NBA draft collapsed to 2 rounds, because you get there's 2 things that come out by Friday, right? Like, just like you said, you got the 1 to 60, and then you have, all these dudes signed with all these other teams. Well, now we're just haggling. It's guaranteed money or it's not guaranteed money, right? Is that basically what it is? So expand the draft, redo the salary structure for all these guys who are coming in. And I think you're right, dude. I think you'll see a lot more. You'll see the bad teams improve or get on that track to improving in a quicker manner than they do now, because half the time they trade their picks and you got pick number 6 and that's the only pick you're going to have for 3 years.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. Like, get rid of the play-in tournament. You're automatically hurting teams. Change the way you do your lottery to where, again, you do the lottery for the top 2 picks. Everybody else gets kind of slotted in, but you can't move up more than 10 spots. And get rid of the damn play-in tournament. Because if I take the Miami Heat out of the example to hammer the play-in tournament a little bit more, because that's what I feel like doing tonight. If you take the Heat out, Atlanta's played in the play-in tournament 4 times. They've played 6 games. Chicago, Memphis, New Orleans have all played in it 3 times. They've played 5 total games. The combined record of those 4 teams since the play-in started, Chicago, Memphis, New Orleans, and Atlanta, 882 and 943. Memphis is the only team that's over 500 in that time period since the play-in tournament came. So Chicago, they seemingly have no plan, but they've cornered the market like the Cleveland Browns do with quarterbacks. The Bulls have every guard available in the NBA. These same teams are in the play-in tournament every year. Why? Because you're hurting their draft position by sliding them into shit like that. Put them into the lottery and quit wasting our damn time and start the NBA playoffs. Hey, what do you know? Maybe like a week earlier. What a concept. Like, it's ridiculous. There's never going to be a right way to curb tanking. There's never going to be an exact solution, but anything is better than what the hell we got. Speaking of hell, beating the living hell out of each other is what San Antonio and Detroit did last night. In Detroit, the Spurs go in there. They beat the Pistons in a game that was about as physical as you can get. And I'm telling you right now, T, I know there's a lot of combinations. I know there's a lot of options. But if one game last night between the Spurs and Pistons is a preview, if you will, of what we could see with Spurs and Pistons in the NBA Finals, sign me the hell up 10 times for that. They were beating the living shit out of each other last night.
Oh, you love to see it, too. You love to see it, especially a team like Detroit, who sucked for for a good period of time. It's great to see them winning and getting the respect and the notoriety that they deserve. And San Antonio has just been they are just so incredible to watch. I don't know. You said something last week about, your bold prediction being a San Antonio, Minnesota Western Conference final. Maybe that leads into a San Antonio, Detroit final in 26.
It's a very, very good possibility, and I definitely would like to see it. It's big games tonight in the NBA. The Knicks, well, they're getting dog-walked by the Cavaliers right now. 81-65 in the third quarter, 21-11. Cleveland is outscoring them. And, T, I talked about this a little bit last week, and you and I both know several Knicks fans, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this team sucks on defense. They cannot play defense, and their defense is supposed to be anchored by Karl Anthony Towns, who might be the most passive big man I've ever seen in my friggin' life. Dude. Like, this team is not going anywhere this year because they can't play defense. And you're starting to see a little bit of the wear and tear on Jalen Brunson. He's getting more and more attention. Teams are being more and more physical. Perfect example tonight. He's 4 of 11 shooting, 14 points. He's a minus 15. OG Anunoby has basically been non-existent for the Knicks this year. This team is not going anywhere in the East, which is great news if you're a Celtics fan or a Pistons fan that we were just talking about.
So I got to tell you this story. So in 2005, my buddy E, who's a Knicks fan, we go to Sacramento. We're sitting behind the Knicks bench at Arco Arena, and Larry Brown is coaching the Knicks. and Jamal Crawford's playing, and Jamal Crawford does something just god awful during the game, right? And so they call a timeout, and we're sitting there because we can hear the entire huddle, and Larry Brown just gets in Jamal Crawford's face and goes, "You fucking soft, Jamal. You fucking soft," and sat him down for the rest of the game. Dude, every time I watch the Knicks play this year on defense, that's all that goes through my head for 48 minutes because this team is soft. I think they got some offensive surge with that Randall trade, but they lost a lot of grit and a lot of, for lack of a better term, Anthony Mason-like qualities in that trade. So, and trades have consequences. I hope the Knicks can figure it out. This team is definitely not as good as last year's.
No, definitely not. Suns and Celtics in the first quarter tonight. The Suns, who are without Dylan Brooks for 4 to 6 weeks, 24-21. Boston looking to get to that 40-win mark before they get 20 losses. Well, tomorrow night, tonight, hopefully it's not tomorrow night because they'd missed the game, but tonight they're going to get on a plane here in Phoenix and head right to Denver for the final game of this road trip where they take on the Nuggets. So that's a late game tomorrow night. Also in the association tomorrow night, big one early, about an hour before we get on the air from the Little Caesars Arena, the Pizza Palace in Detroit, OKC and Detroit, another possible NBA Finals preview. I will say this about the Pistons. I love what's going on there. Cade Cunningham, I'm telling you, we've talked about it. I can't talk about it. We're going to get more into the NBA conversation tomorrow, but I'm trying to help people out there. You look at the amount of games that Nikola Jokic and SGA have remaining that they are allowed to miss, otherwise be ineligible for postseason awards. If you think for a second you're on this Pistons team, Cade Cunningham is still 5-1 to win MVP. Behind him, Victor Wembanyama and Jaylen Brown. Don't wait. If you're feeling this Pistons team, do it. Because now's your chance to get Cade Cunningham at this late in the year at a fantastic price. Normally, I would just keep that in my pocket, but we're turning over a new leaf here. I want everybody to win. And the amount of games that those two can miss, interesting. It'll be interesting to see if SGA will be playing tomorrow night. I haven't seen anything either way on that. But this Pistons team, the one thing I will say that concerns me a little bit about the Pistons, because we know in the postseason, you got to knock down shots. And there's a couple of guys on this team that can do it from time to time, but have struggled at least as of late. That'd be my only concern with the Pistons is can they knock down the shots? But an interesting one tomorrow night back at the Pizza Palace for them. Let's get into college basketball. Plenty of stuff going on. Big Monday last night. Bill Self continues to not lose games on Bill Monday is what we should call it at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, has not lost back-to-back games ever at the Fog. They get a big win over Houston, who's now lost 3 games in a row. That Big 12 just continues to beat the living hell out of each other. Arizona in action tonight. Speaking of the Big 12, they're down 4 at Baylor. Iowa State up 3 on Utah. Miami of Ohio, already another win, 28-0. Don't at me. They're going to the tournament whether you think they belong there or not. Duke puts up another 100 tonight. Granted, it was against Notre Dame. And Virginia, a team that we saw ranked in the top 16. They get another win tonight, pounding a good NC State team, 90-61. We saw the top 16 seeds revealed by tournament chair Keith Gill, who is the Sunbelt commissioner, if I remember correctly. Interesting stuff here, because out of the top 16, and I'm just counting from this weekend, out of the top 16 teams that we saw seeded, Michigan, Iowa State, Houston, now twice, Illinois, Kansas, and Vanderbilt all lost games on Saturday or Sunday last weekend. What do you make of the top 16 seeds? Because I don't really think there was anything that surprised me. Virginia maybe being the 16th seed. There's a couple people that can question that. The two teams on the outside looking in, if you will, from the top 16 would be Alabama and Arkansas right now. Virginia, a couple of eyeballs raised. Texas Tech, everybody's like, they're not a 13 team, especially without Toppin. Listen, they fell from a 3-line to a 4-line because of the Toppin injury. They've gone out and won 2 games since losing Toppin. What'd you make of the top 16? Was there anybody that surprised you in where they were placed?
I mean, the only surprises that I really saw were Nebraska, because I'm not used to seeing that name among the top 16. And I'm not so sure they're having a little course correction in their season right now. And I mean, it is what it is. They're having an outstanding year. They might be a little, I think when all is said and done, I think they're going to be closer to that 5 or 6 line, to be honest with you, depending on how they finish up and how they play in the Big 19 tournament. Vanderbilt's a good basketball team, though. Holy smokes, they are a very good basketball team. In fact, I'll talk about them a little bit later. But other than that, no real surprises. I mean, all these teams have earned the ability to be in these spots. And you talk about Houston hitting the skids a little bit, but that Big 12. I mean, we talked about the Big 12 being the best football conference you didn't watch all year. Now 10x, and that's the basketball that's being played right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's kind of an interesting spot here because Houston, they're next in action. Oh, I don't know why I'm getting so much enjoyment out of this. It's probably, I'm sick in the head is what I am. Houston's next game is at the Fertitta Center on Saturday, where I think they're going to literally punt Colorado into the abyss this weekend because you're getting a Houston team that gets after your ass anyways, and they're coming off of 3 losses, and they know, and that's the thing. I think that was the other interesting thing, and some people not familiar with how the seeding works. Iowa State was given the 4th number 1 seed. They went and lost at BYU, but that was key because the debate was Iowa State, it was UConn, and it was Houston for that final number 1 seed. Well, the South Regional is in Houston. That's the coup, if you will, for the Cougars to get to Houston and play that regional final in Houston. Michigan being the top overall seed at the time, they get to basically, for those not familiar, the number 1 overall seed gets to pick not only where their regional final will be, but where they get to play their first 2 games. So you've got this race here between what I'm assuming now is Duke as that number 1 overall seed from their win against Michigan. And let's stop right there. That Duke-Michigan game was fantastic to watch. I was beyond impressed with how dominant Duke's bigs were against Michigan, who is a very, very big team. And the Duke big guys absolutely dominated the Wolverines on Sunday. So that race for the top overall seed and the perks and the bonuses, if you will, that come out of it. The region I wanted to get into with you, because you and I have spent several March Madness years up in Vegas at our go-to spot up in Vegas. It's been a while. But the region that will make you drink and the region that makes blowing up brackets a bodily function, your top 4 seeds, who all have not lost since this came out. It's the only region with their top 4 seeds that has not had anybody lose yet. Arizona, the 3rd overall seed, they're the number 1 seed in the West right now. Purdue, the 8th overall seed, they're the number 2 in the West. Gonzaga, 12th overall seed, 3 in the West. And Michigan State, 14th overall seed, 4th in the West. Those 4 teams are going to blow up so many brackets if that West stays the way it is, the West Regional Final in San Jose. I think it's safe to assume that Arizona is going to be the number 1 seed out West unless something catastrophic happens in the next 2 weeks. But I'm telling you right now, if I had $1 million to put on the line, I would give somebody $1 million if they could predict the West region 100% perfect. Because if those are your top 4 teams in the West, and St. Louis, who I think is the best mid-major this year, gets put in the West, I'm taking the Billikens to win the West because I can't trust either one of those 4 teams at the top.
Well, and just think about other teams in the West. That I mean, you're not including teams like Utah State, who's been a really good season. San Diego State is always there at the end. New Mexico has 20 wins, so a good showing in the Mountain West tournament, and they can make a statement. So there's a lot of teams there but yeah, this mess right here as we see it, like, holy smokes, no, not a chance. This would be, and we do it every year, right? We always bet all the 5-12 games because that at least one of them is going to win. Dude, you could see a 13-14 just upending this entire region on the first weekend.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I have never, I think for the rest of the season, never been a bigger fan of Arizona, Purdue, Gonzaga, and Michigan State than I am right now because I want to see those 4 teams at the top of the West region because I want all hell to break loose in the West region. I think, a couple of things that came out of this too. the tournament director, chair, if you will, Keith Gill. By the way, it's amazing to watch a tournament committee that actually like watches the games and cares about.
Who would have thought, right?
I know.
Who would have thought?
He talked about injuries obviously playing a part, and there's some significant injuries across college basketball. But the other thing he made a point to say, and gee, I wonder who he was talking about here, but he said injuries and player availability is going to take place and be a consideration this year, which is interesting because now this week Darren Peterson's come out and he said, basketball is my life and I love basketball and all this. I think a couple people have finally gotten into his ear, including his coach calling him out that, hey, not only are you hurting your NBA stock, but you're hurting Kansas as far as seeding goes. Texas Tech, we talked about their fall, and then the most debated was that fourth number 1 seed between UConn, Houston, and Iowa State. Iowa State at the time that week, having beat Houston on Big Monday, and then UConn losing to Creighton as they did. We're going to talk about UConn here in just a second. What do you think? Who is a team you're looking? You mentioned Nebraska. Is there a team that you think can make a big run or take a colossal fall here with a couple of weeks left in the regular season? Probably a Big 12 team because of how damn deep that conference is.
Oh my goodness, that Big 12 is just the top of that conference is probably the best top half of of a conference in college basketball right now. BYU has 20 wins, Texas Tech 20 wins, Iowa State 23 wins. I mean, the numbers that this conference is putting up, but I'm sneaky on this Vanderbilt squad. I don't know about you, but I'm sneaky on this squad. I think that's a good basketball team. I think a couple wins in the SEC tournament, and they're going to lock in one of those top fours.
Yeah, and they lost. I mean, they lost a tough one to Tennessee on Saturday. They've got another tough one coming up tomorrow. Yeah, absolutely. Another tough one coming up tomorrow with a Georgia team that seems to be a little more game. Our guy Chris Freeman on the mic at Memorial Gymnasium in Nashville for that one tomorrow. I do also really like that Vanderbilt team. And again, as we've talked about, scour the Ken Palms. You've heard a couple more terms. Mac and I will get into a couple of these tomorrow. WAB is a new one, wins above bracket. Everybody's still trying to figure that one out from Saturday. But we got some big games tomorrow. Some other stuff. We're going to talk about some liquid locks for tomorrow. But I told everybody, making its debut on the show, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with it, TJ's been doing this for a little while. We don't have him do it all the time because it is one of those things that you can't overdo. But baseball season's coming up, and TJ has a thing he likes to call hall passes. For people that we give hall passes to for not winning shit or not getting the job done. So for the very first time, ladies and gentlemen, on the program, TJ's newest edition of Hall Passes.
Well, I've got a couple things here for you, Mike, with baseball season starting. I've got a player, I've got a pitcher, and I've got a team that you can look at and go, you know what? We keep talking about these guys, and they haven't done jack crap in the last few years. And two of them, the pitcher and the player, because the teams don't move, have changed locations, and that's going to put even more pressure on them this season. First up, I'm going with our friend of the show, the polar bear, Pete Alonso, the key piece in the Baltimore offseason rebuild. He's had great production in New York. Dude, he had 126 RBIs last year, but he was never the man, especially when they brought in Soto. He was always seemed to be behind Soto and Lindor. But now he goes to Baltimore. He's going to be counted on to anchor this lineup. So it's a new situation for him. The Orioles, according to reports, are looking to trade Ryan Mountcastle. So first place is his to keep for the next 5 years. He's getting paid 31 schmil a season. So he's getting paid like a superstar. It's time for him to be a superstar for this Orioles team. On the mound, I've got your boy Dylan Cease coming over from the San Diego Padres. He was one of the early signees in free agency. The Blue Jays give him a pile of money. And look, the Blue Jays were stacked at pitching this year. When they got Trey, I can't even say his last name.
Savage.
He is a savage is what he is. He was outstanding. Eric Lauer was great. But Dylan Cease is being counted on to be the number one starter. He had a sub 500 record in San Diego. Yeah. Oh, he threw a no hitter. Yeah. Okay. So what? He won He's won 7 games over 500 in his career. He's age 30. It's time for him to put up and get the Jays back to the series, or there's going to be a lot of questions down at Real Sports about what this signing was all about. And the team, Mike, the team that I love to talk about, the San Diego Padres. Look, this team has had a ton of big contracts. Machado, Tatis. They've had great players go through it. Michael King is an outstanding pitcher. But the results have always been underwhelming. You had the one series win against the Dodgers a couple years ago, but how long are you going to roam the halls of Petco Park talking about, remember that one time when we beat the Dodgers? Because that was great. Well, your boys up, neighbors to the north, have reeled off 2 World Series and are probably going to reel off a 3rd in a row. And, oh, by the way, let's give an extension to A.J. Preller, who continues to sign these people and run these other players out of town. Although, like you said, kind of keen on the Castellanos signing. But the bottom line is this team needs to make playoff run. They've got a whole lot of blown expectations. They're still not better than the Dodgers. It's probably the last kick at the can for this roster before it's torn down. They've got to make the playoffs, and they got to bring the noise at Petco. Otherwise, it's going to be a long, cold winter.
That is hall passes, ladies and gentlemen. So 3 guys that TJ's putting on the spot: Pete Alonso, Dylan Cease, and the Padres as a whole. And I agree with you. I think it's going to be interesting to see. And from what we've seen, via social media and watching some of the games, seeing some of the insiders that are following the teams around spring, I've seen from Pete Alonso a guy who looks very relaxed in a place that's expecting a lot of him. I think you bring up a great point there with Ryan Mountcastle. I mean, it's Pete's team. And then you've got the obvious. You've got Adley Rutschman, and you've got Gunnar Henderson, and the pieces that they have there. I think a relaxed Pete Alonso makes a serious run at AL MVP is what I'm expecting from him. And Dylan Cease, that's another interesting one, because you know what the expectation is in Toronto, and your boy, Trey Savage. We need to get you a Trey Savage jersey, but that's exactly what it is. Dylan Cease, now back in the American League. Maybe that's a good thing for him. We've talked about the AL East. It's a division, I think, that is going to provide theater in whichever form that it does all season long. And I don't have to go any further on my thoughts on the Padres, but I think you nailed it there, man.
I'm with let's go back to the Jays for a second, because I thought that when they called up Addison Barger last year, that just added a ton to the offense. But now Bichette is gone. So this offense, although they did sign Okamoto, it still feels like it's got something missing here that they're going to have to figure out while they're down in Dunedin this spring.
Yeah, and it's going to be an interesting thing because, and again, we said this a little bit earlier when we were talking about Colton Griffin. It's nice to hit home runs in February, but if the beginning of spring training is any indicator of home runs, when we get into those summer months and we start dropping some dollar dingers out here, this could be a good sign. We're just going to stay away from it in the month of late March and early April, because that one hasn't been very fruitful for us in the past. We get hockey going tomorrow night, T. I know that makes both you and I excited in looking at the schedule that gets kind of rolling here. As soon as we get off the show, if you check our social channels, our bold predictions for the second half of hockey season will be out. But we've got some interesting games, some interesting teams. We've talked about the Olympic break and how it impacts some of these teams and how they go forward. Buffalo right out of the chute against New Jersey, who's, as you mentioned, I'm not going to let that cat out of the bag, but you have some thoughts on that in our bold prediction segment. Toronto and Tampa Bay right out of the gate. Colorado's at Utah. Edmonton and Anaheim, that's going to be another interesting one tomorrow night. Interested to see some of these teams and how the break impacts them. We know that there was, unfortunately, and not surprisingly, there was injuries in the Olympic tournament that are going to impact some of these races. But now we get a chance to do something that's really cool. We get to kind of hit a reset here. So I will start with you. Second half-ish. Not really a half, but you know what I'm saying. We've got a trade deadline coming up. We've already seen a couple of moves. If you get your reset, which you do, press the button and tell me who you think now is going to play in the Stanley Cup Final.
I've got Tampa Bay and Colorado. And
Don't
I'm
break
like,
that super risky limb you're on there.
I'm really going out on a limb there. Colorado got Brent Kulak today, which I thought was a really good move. Samuel Girard goes the other way. He's a really good. Girard's a really good puck moving defenseman. Pittsburgh's going to get gets a good return on this, so it actually could be a win-win for both teams because Pittsburgh's got to get younger. But dude, can I just? I feel bad for the Utah Mammoth tomorrow because I think Nathan McKinnon is going to score 38 goals. Like he is. If I am for the next, I'm kind of expecting the first week to be a little bit rough, especially for all the players who played up until that last weekend. But I think McKinnon's got a chip on his shoulder, man, and I would not want to be on the other side of him right now. We saw the run that this team got on early in the season, and it's still Colorado, Dallas, Minnesota, and go fight for fourth because this Colorado team is going to just be gangbusters.
Yeah, he's not going to miss that shot tomorrow night. So just a thought there, Vejmelka. Don't give him that. He's not missing it. So I think the Pacific Division is going to be fascinating and how it impacts the race down the stretch here. Obviously, the wild card in both conferences, but I'm specifically looking at the West here. You've got San Jose, Nashville, and the Kings, all within 5 points of Anaheim, the Sharks being the lowest at 58. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the Sharks here after the break. I think they are one of the teams that the break is going to impact the most, even though Macklin Celebrini's performance in the Olympics has shot up all their season ticket renewals and ticket sales and merchandise sales. Not that that's surprising. But
I saw one of those in the wild the other day, by the way.
Yeah, you did. I was actually impressed with that. A great one, too. Teal one. It pops off the cover there. I'm gonna go a little contrarian here, and I wish Vegas Mac was here to hear this because he wouldn't believe it here. But in looking at everything here, I like Carolina, and we talked about Carolina a little bit earlier, and their willingness to actually go for it and make the moves that they have, and I don't know if they're necessarily done. On the other side, you're gonna think I'm really freaking crazy because I like the Minnesota Wild, and there was a reason I liked Matt Boldy to score a goal on Sunday because we've talked about him specifically over the last couple of years. And I think while we talk about how some of these teams could be negatively impacted, and you just mentioned Colorado and feeling bad for Utah tomorrow night, I think what Boldy did in that gold medal game is another kind of jumping off point for a team that's already really good. And you'll find out here after the show when we post our bold predictions for the second half what Mac thinks of Colorado in their placement in the West. I think this Minnesota team not only actually can get out of the first round of the playoffs this year, but is a serious threat to win the West. I think Colorado is going to be a tough team to take down, but we talk about the Big 12 all the time in college basketball and college football. That Central Division is like the Big 12, and when you're playing that level of competition on the regular, I think it only benefits Minnesota going forward. I know that's a huge risk to take on a team that hasn't got it done, but I like them. There's just something about them this year.
I don't think that's as crazy as you think because of the acquisitions they made. Quinn Hughes has been incredible. We saw what he did in the Olympic tournament. This team has been frustrated by failure in the playoffs, ones and dones for the most part. But this is a really good team that's getting really good goaltending. And the Matt Boldy goal the other day, if that's any indication of what's going to happen the last 26 games of this season, they're in for a good time in Minnesota. So, no, I think that's a great – and Carolina's been linked to Elias Pettersson, so we'll see what happens in the next 9 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch, but I don't think it's that much of a stretch. And again, you mentioned, Quinn Hughes and what he's already setting records in Minnesota, and he's barely been there for a cup of coffee, probably still living in a freaking hotel for all we know. But I like that Minnesota team a lot. I know it's going to be in their heads when they get to the first round of the playoffs, but they've got the talent, and I think Quinn Hughes is the guy that pushes them over that hump. So I like Carolina, Minnesota. You got Tampa and Colorado. I'll get Mac's thoughts tomorrow night. Final thing here on this Tuesday, I'm used to having you on Wednesdays here. I almost said it was Wednesday, but we're looking at college basketball on Wednesday night with some big games all across the board. Give me a couple liquid locks, a couple numbers you like for tomorrow night.
Well, I've got to go with the teams that I'm kind of like. I've got to go with the ones that I'm loving right now. I've got to go with Vanderbilt tomorrow, -8.5 against Georgia. Vanderbilt is going to be one of those teams that even as a high seed, like if they get into that 3 spot or even as a 4, that's a team that could blow some things up for when you get into the later rounds of the tournament. So I like them, and I've got to go with the newest basketball powerhouse. I've got to go with Nebraska at home tomorrow night. It's a -18.5 the last time I saw it, but you know what? It might as well be. You're trying to shoot at Pinnacle Bank Arena with all those fans on top of you. They're used to being on top of the volleyball court. They are loving every minute of this. I think they just put a hurting on the Terrapins tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think I'm a lot of people interested to see how Nebraska reacts and comes out, if you will, tomorrow night. I like both of those picks. I really do. I'm actually going to play them with my 2 and my 2. And this is a team I've been kind of stalking, if you will, in a creepy way for a while. But Saturday, they kind of answered a lot of the questions I have. And it's a battle for the top of the Big East, and that's St. John's and UConn tomorrow night. And I will say this about Mac's beloved UConn Huskies, and it's weird to say this about a Dan Hurley team, especially over the last couple of years. I've got some serious concerns about this UConn team and their ability on the defensive side of the floor. St. John's, they want to turn it into a freaking track meet. And again, this game for the top of the Big East, it is in stores tomorrow night. Or no, it's in Hartford tomorrow night at the People's Bank Arena. Yep. Tickets as low as $115 to take Vegas Max Ticket Tuesday thing here. But I've got some serious concerns on this UConn team, and St. John's loves to get the ball out in traffic and move the ball. I'm glad that I just saw this because I haven't bet it yet. I was going to take them at a lower number. Now I'm going to take them at a point higher at +5.5. I like the Johnnies to go in there, and if they don't get the win tomorrow night, I think it's going to be close. Another team that's a freight train going downhill right now and wrecking everything in their path, and I'll get sure enjoyment out of watching them wreck Sean Miller on his home floor tomorrow night, and that's the Florida Gators back in the top 10. They not only on this winning streak are beating teams, they're beating the shit out of teams right now. And you've got the best rebounding team in the country. You've got an average at best Texas team. Florida is a short favorite on the road. I was expecting this number to be higher. They're 6.5-point favorites tomorrow night. So give me the Gators -6.5. Give me the Johnnies +5.5. Any final words from you on this Tuesday? Your last show of the week.
I would just like to thank my buddy Steve because I've got a little souvenir from Ryan Smith's new toy. So nice. I think I'm just going to start collecting popcorn tins. But
you are a popcorn guy.
Watch out. I think a really good bet tomorrow, as if he plays, because we've heard that a lot of these players may not play the first game, is I think McKinnon goes over on points tomorrow. I think he's pissed.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet if he does play. If they're not all still inebriated in South Florida right now. Plenty of stuff to talk about on tomorrow's program. Mac will be back with me again. Programming reminder this week, just shows today and tomorrow. Take a little time off, hang out with the wifey for her birthday, do some cool stuff, do some day drinking, which is always one of my favorite hobbies. So for everybody behind the scenes, for Vegas, Mac will be back with us tomorrow. Don't forget our bold predictions for NHL's second half coming up in just a matter of moments on our social channels. For T, I'm Mike. You know the drill. We're out.